when sparks bubble. Trying to pay ease, become a target. Don't be a mark, man. Cents in the FV, cents in the dollar. Ain't trying to pay ease. What's going off the Bentleys? Now on water, jet skis. It's a party life, I done took risks.
Hello everyone, here's the review for MV by Eaze. Again, I'm going to kick off with the lyrics. They're definitely easily the strongest part of the track, and the vocals and the delivery is confident and clean in the way that it's rapped, especially over the verses. So talking more about the verses, they have good dynamics. The rhythm and the flow is changed every so often. You have an interesting structure where you just have the hook at the start, the end, and essentially then you have three separate verses in the middle. These separate verses are changed up with the style of the delivery of the vocals and also some instrumentation as well. The track has a lot of energy in it. This really brings out individuality in the lyrics, the flow and the track as a whole. The lyrics here are pretty simple. They all surround the idea of people being envious of you. So there's a lot of bragging rights being shown off, which is done quite creatively and quite well through delivery and the lyrics themselves. The clarity in the chorus is the one thing that I might give a -2, just because it's not that clear on the delivery and it feels quite drony in the way that the lines are sung. Just throughout that bit, it can get mixed up a little bit with the stuff in the back and the front of the vocals. So maybe that could have come through a little bit cleaner there. Overall, for the lyrics and the topic and the delivery, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. So moving on to instrumental. Instruments are pretty typical for this kind of track. I quite like the 808 slides that you have in the intro, and then obviously throughout the rest of the track, it just gives it a bit more dynamics to have that sliding note that comes through very strong in the bass line. The drums, when they come in, are pretty good. You have those sprinkly hi-hats, you have that variation in the pitch of the hi-hats coming through. It just adds a little bit more tempo, especially to that middle verse, where it really sort of picks up in its energy, which really complements the vocals as well. There could be a little bit more variation throughout the track. The hook and the middle verse are essentially exactly the same in terms of instrumentation. It might have been nice to fit in some variations or some fills to differentiate between them. One of the problems, as we'll get through when I talk about the mix, is that everything is so loud and maxed out that you may not be able to find room for more layers or lines in the arrangement for the instrumentation, and then it may get too messy. Obviously this could be solved through stripping everything back to composition and arrangement before applying the mix. So due to a lack of sort of innovation and very typical and stripped back instrumentation, I give it a 6 out of 10. So moving on to the production, and I'm going to predominantly talk about the mix here. As I just mentioned, everything is so maxed out and so loud. This really flattens the dynamics of the track, and in fact everything is fighting for headspace as the levels just collide with each other. It can cause a lot of problems in clipping, especially for the vocals, where they're really pushed away and then brought forwards because of the lack of headroom for the vocals to fill up. So there could have been a few different issues. One could have been raw recording of the vocals. If they're put in too loud with too much heat, then you could lose some quality in that. And then the second thing, I think when the production has been done, they wanted to push the 808 to its limit with a lot of distortion, and unfortunately just clipping in your mix is not the way to do that. It's irreparable when you go through to the master, and it really affects the sound of the track. Another problem is that there is a lot of high end, which is not normally a bad thing, but when you have a lot of sprinkly hi-hats and these high-end bells in there, which provide a lot of the melodic structure, then you combine that with a lack of de-essing and sorting of the plosive sounds in the vocals, then it gets a little bit abrasive on the ears to listen throughout the whole track with those high-end frequencies bouncing around too much. Again, clipping is one of the problems here. A couple of other minor points about the mix. There is a bit of variation in the hi-hat volumes, obviously to get these different pitches and to make these this dynamic rhythm. A few different samples have been used. These could do with a little bit of compression to keep them on the same level. They come up and down in the mix a little bit too much. Same could be said for the snare. Again, I think it's a little bit too loud. It takes the vocals down a little bit, which you don't particularly want to do in a track like this. So again, to move from the high end to the mids, they're completely squashed out by the mix and the low end coming up and muddying everything. I appreciate the aesthetic that the production and the mix is trying to create with the clipping and distortion, but not applied great here. So just touching on production, there is a couple of good points. You have a good intro introducing the track, everything coming in slowly, having the tags on the front and moving them to the back of the mix for the intro, very good. Then you have a great tape stop in there to bring in the vocals with the coming straight in. This is all really good production technique just to add interest to the track. Again, with the production, there's good transitions in the verses between the quieter parts without the percussion and then the louder parts. Getting from A to B there is done really well. So unfortunately, the mix lets this one down a little bit. If everything was just toned down and then brought back up for the master, then we could get a much crisper and cleaner sound with really pronounced vocals, and that would really let the artist and the rapper shine through. So overall, the production and the mixing gets a 4 out of 10. So just to touch on the originality of the track, it's a pretty typical hip-hop track about bragging rights, but I like the way that the lyrics are done and the way that they flow. It adds an individual twist. As I said, having the hype man in the back brings a lot of energy, and with energy comes originality in a lot of cases. I appreciate the approach of the distortion in the production to also add to the originality, but in this situation, as I've previously explained, doesn't quite work. So a final note on the video, which again, a lot of effort has been put into this to make it a full package and a good product. For me, it's a little bit over top on the editing, but there's plenty of different clips in there, there's plenty of different shots, and you never get bored watching it while listening to the track. Everything's synced up great, and it brings energy similar to the track itself. The only thing that I would say is some of the effects and the editing is slightly amateurish, but again, it goes with the aesthetic of the song, so I'm not going to bring it down too much for that. Overall, the only thing that brings this one down is the mixing, but it still comes through as a strong track, and it gets second place with a 6 out of 10.